There are so many brawlers in Brawl Stars, and we are about to go through them all and rank them using a tier list. Where does your favorite end up? What's up guys, welcome to another video. If you're new here, we love dropping great tips, top 10s, and highlights on our channel. We're quickly growing and we appreciate all of our subscribers. If you're not already subscribed and you like the content, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on post notifications by clicking or tapping that bell. Make sure to give this video a like and share it with friends. I'm Jess for Top Row Gaming, and now let's get into the video. Today we're ranking all brawlers in Brawl Stars. For these rankings, we'll be taking into account how a brawler does overall in all game modes, their utility, and how often they're used by pros. We'll also be taking into account how easy it is to get a brawler as well. Let's start with one of the first brawlers you'll be able to get, Shelley. And unfortunately, being our first brawler, she's also the first one to go in the F tier. Shelley is one of the more basic brawlers you can play as. Utility-wise, she is as reliable as can be with her close combat to mid-range firepower, but she's nothing special. However, she does have a high survivability. Undoubtedly, there are a lot of maps where Shelley can shine, but you wouldn't see her in high-ranking matches due to her lacking in some areas compared to almost all other fellow brawlers. Next up, let's do Dynamite. Dynamite is one of the brawlers that specializes in area damage and can be a great defense brawler. He can help you push your enemies back into a line or choke a point to make it so that your enemies hesitate before going into battle. The way he deals damage is also interesting, as he doesn't need to see you, but simply needs to be in range of his bomb's detonation. He's slightly better than Shelley, so we're going to put him in the D tier, and the reason why he's there is because his attacks are relatively slow and you can actually dodge his attacks. And on top of that, he has a low HP and is very weak to melee attackers. Let's bring up Colt next. Colt is another brawler that you get at the start. I remember using Colt because of his long range and high damage attacks. His super can destroy walls and gives an even bigger boost to his already high damage attacks. But the lack of utility and relatively low HP makes Colt more of a liability than an asset in a competitive field. He's great though for starting out in Brawl Stars, but as you start ranking up, you'll start going up against stronger and stronger brawlers. Let's put Colt in the C tier. When it comes to debuffing enemies, Crow is your guy. He can deal damage over time with the poison from his Switchblade ability. On top of that, it can also cause enemies to do 10% less damage with the poison in effect. His long-range attacks can certainly be a great asset in battle, especially in the duo showdown game mode. He lacks that burst damage that can be really useful in taking out enemies in a flash, and his super doesn't deal that much damage. For that reason, we're putting Crow in C tier. Let's have a look at Tick now. Tick is one of the brawlers you can get in the game after obtaining 4,000 trophies in the game. His long range and the way he attacks is incredibly useful in grouping together enemies and slowly chipping their health down. The main thing you can do with Tick is that his super can block damage if really needed, and it does splash damage, which is useful in this game. However, Tick has low HP and is vulnerable to most attacks. Almost anything burst damage or high damage can instantly kill him. Regardless of that, I think placing him in the B tier is the right move. Poco is a common brawler that you can easily get at the start of the game. He's a great healer and a great initiator in most battles. He's a great control type of brawler in most maps and is great in most maps due to his utility. Poco is a great support brawler, hands down. But as we all know, the support types are weak to head-on damage, and that's something to keep in mind with using Poco. Once close combat attacks can close the gap, you're instantly done for. So be careful with that. Let's drop him in the B tier as well. What do you think of our list so far? Agree with us? Make sure to hit that like button to let us know. Comment down below with which brawlers you think we got right and which ones you think we got wrong. Now let's take a look at Frank. Frank is certainly one of the biggest late-game brawlers. He's a great tank and is great for intimidation or just pushing the enemies back. With his high health and incredible kit, it would make Frank one of the better tanks in the game. However, his attacks are very slow and can be cancelled by knock-up attacks and is extremely weak to long-range attacks. Frank was one of the first brawlers I got, and he was great to use, but most of his attacks just left me wanting more out of his kit. For that, I think he's B tier. Nida is one of the fan favorites due to her super that summons her big baby bear, and her mid-range attack which makes her one of the great brawlers to start with. Her attacks and stats are really well-rounded and are great from gem grab game mode. A downside to her is that as her skill cap rises, you'll easily be wiped out, but she boasts an incredibly average HP and range. However, if you're a good enough player and know the ins and outs of Nida real well, you can for sure get to great lengths with her. However, if you don't, Nida is a C-tier agent. Beau is another one of the trophy brawlers that you can get after getting 3,000 trophies in the game. Beau has easily one of the best supers in the game. His super is all about setting mines around the map strategically and playing with your opponent, and the best part of this is the high damage output the mines have. Brawlers would use Beau to defend critical points in the map with his mines. He's great for both showdown and gem grab, mainly because of his super. He's been a good staple overall. Beau is our first A-tier brawler on the list. Now this next brawler is another of the trophy brawlers and boasts many great stats. Brock has a high damage output and pretty decent range. His kit along with his super can very well dish out big damage and could potentially kill mid to low HP enemies. Paired with the perfect tank can help you get far in the battlefield. But in the end, when pitted against other brawlers, especially ones in our A and S tier, he's pretty hindered. Brock is very fragile. His HP is low in comparison to other brawlers, and much like Frank earlier on our list, his super could easily be dodged due to how slow he moves. And on top of that, he greatly lacks in the utility department. Just like Frank, let's put Brock in the B tier. This brawler is one of the brawlers that are effective against long-range brawlers. Penny's utility is great due to the fact that it forces enemies to be constantly moving. Her primary attack has a splash damage effect, and her super can keep enemies a far away distance from whatever you need to protect. With that said, her kit is weak in close range combat and she doesn't seem to have any burst damage. She is also weak to 1v1 matchups, but she makes up for her weakness in utility. Penny might be C tier, but you know what? Let's put her in the B tier. Bull is another of the starter brawlers that everyone can get at the start. He's a great starter tank and his skill set is great for clearing distance and also clearing enemies. He has high health, which is a huge factor in this game. The thing is, his whole skill set just isn't up against the other brawlers much. His short range gives way for long range attackers to get him easily. His super isn't something you'll be able to control, so if there are any poison clouds or mines in the way, you will get the short end of the stick. Bull is a B tier brawler. Let's take a look at 8-bit now. This brawler has high health and high damage, but severely lacks in the movement speed area. And to be honest, that is the biggest thing about him. We believe that he could very well be huge in other areas, but then when pitted against these brawlers that can kind of zoom around the map, it just makes 8-bit a big target. And along with this, his high health and high damage, it really just paints an even bigger target on 8-bit's back. We're going to put 8-bit in the C tier. We are powering through this list, guys. A few more brawlers to go. Would you make any changes so far? Don't hesitate to let us know in the comments down below. We love hearing from you, even if you think we got some brawlers wrong. If you like the content though, make sure to hit that like button so we know if you want to see more videos just like this one. Next up is Sandy. Sandy has been one of our favorites for a while, and he surely has been killing it in this game. He was bumped down from A tier to B tier due to the maps more so favoring mid to long range brawlers. And when you look at it, there are certainly some brawlers that can do this job a bit better. However, he still isn't something to ignore. His kit includes an area of effect that can easily cloud and deal damage to any enemies caught within it, and of course his piercing rounds. Although he's been bumped down to B tier, he sure could still kill it in many game modes. The next agent I want to take a look at is Jessie. Jessie is one of the few brawlers who can summon an annoying gadget to mess with the enemy. Her primary attack is cool as well because it seeks the closest target after the first one is hit. Her super can spawn a turret that does a significant amount of damage that can be a great hindrance if left undealt with. Jessie has a few drawbacks, the biggest one being that she cannot deal with close range attackers. Unfortunately, we're putting Jessie in the F tier. Rosa is our next brawler. She has high health and a decent damage output, enough to put her on the B tier. Her utility can greatly help her out and can be a real nuisance if she manages to sneak up on you. Her durability can help you in most boss battles, and she's a beast in showdown battles. She's also a fast mover and a strong 1v1 brawler. The downside to her is that you can avoid her even when she uses her ult, so keep in mind distance when you use her. Like I mentioned, we've got Rosa in the B tier. Let's do Nani now. Nani is a great brawler that is essentially the glass cannon of the Brawl Stars Brawlers list. She has great utility and of course a high damage output, and the best part about her is that her super is basically indestructible and explodes when it gets near you, dealing a lot of damage. Her star power can also add more to her already high damage, making her even more dangerous. Of course, the biggest drawback with glass cannons is the fact that they have low health, but with how high her damage is compared to her HP is great enough to bridge that gap. Some of you may put Nani in the A tier for your lists, and that's fine, but for our list, we have her in the B tier. Daryl is another great brawler. He wields 2 double-barreled shotguns that can deal a lot of damage in close range. Pair that with his high health and it can make him a real threat on the battlefield. His super is a great addition to his kit as well, allowing him to quickly escape or quickly close the gap between you and your enemy. His star powers complement this super as well. It can be either giving you a shield or doubling your reload speed to get the most out of this brawler. He is also a great team brawler as well. He can serve as a frontline defense or as a main attacker, so plan well and use him well. Let's go ahead and put Daryl in the B tier. Spoilers for this next brawler, we're ranking them low, but this brawler could be considered one of the more underrated in the game. Mortis is a vampire in the most literal sense. He can deal damage from up close and heal himself with the damage he deals with his super. The best thing about his primary attack is that it can be used to close the gap with the long to mid-range brawlers, and that being a primary attack effect is awesome due to the fact that many long-range brawlers' biggest weakness is close combat brawlers. And if you think about it, with his primary attack letting him dash around, he'd be the best crystal holder in the smash and grab game mode. The bad side to him is that he can't break walls unlike most brawlers in the game, and that his health pool is low, but with his super letting him heal up when he deals damage is already a good cover for this one weakness. Overall, we think he's a C tier brawler, but like I mentioned, an argument could be made for a higher level. B. Rico is next. This brawler has the unique ability to let bullets ricochet off walls, letting you hit enemies in a certain angle, making sure you're all safe and well while dashing out of damage. To add even more to the fire, the attacks themselves are already long-ranged enough. He does well as a support brawler and as well as a standalone brawler. The only problem with his character lies in his whole mechanic as well. The most optimal way you would want to use this character is by playing a little hide and seek in the grass, so for sure you won't be able to be caught. In a high-stakes fast round, you won't be able to do this much, and that would be the flaw that we find in his kit. We're going to place Rico in the B tier. Next up, we have BB. This brawler has been well received in past metas of the game, but with the recent nerfs to her, she's been forced to go from a higher tier to B tier, but despite that, she's still well received and can handle herself well. Her primary attack is nothing big, but it's the mechanics of her character that make her as dangerous as she can be. She's able to charge up her meter, and when that meter reaches 3, her next attack will have a knockback buff to it. Her super isn't something to ignore either. When she sends out that bubble, you better start running. Her super can bounce off walls and pierce through enemies, allowing it to go through and damage even more enemies nearby. I already said we're putting BB in the B tier. Primo is one of the more eccentric brawlers. If you thought he was a close combat brawler, well, you're dead wrong. His range is actually well beyond close and is entering more on the mid-range type of brawler. He also has more HP than you'd think and also a high damage output. He can both be used in offense and defense. His super can be used both ways as well. It allows you to escape or straight up just decimate an enemy by separating him from his team. The big downside is that his range is so far that if you have an enemy at close range, you're basically dead. In close range, you won't be able to hit them as effectively, so keep that super in case of that happening. Unfortunately, we're putting Primo in the C tier for that reason. Now, Leon is a brawler that could be dangerous to go up against. He's got fast movement speed and a super that lets him go invisible. He's a great pick for those assassin-type players. The one thing we like about him is his high burst damage if you're able to attack in close range. His star powers either give you a boost in movement speed or heal when you're invisible, and those two are stats that are critical in a game like this. Leon, however, is very vulnerable to area of effect skills, and if you attack when you're invisible, the invisibility goes away. So be mindful of how you use him. We don't want to have to do it, but come on guys, Leon is D tier. How are we doing, guys? This is a really long list, but hang in there and we'll make it to the end together. If you made it to this part of the video, let's smash that like button for hanging in there to see where all of our favorite brawlers end up on this list. Next up, we have Barley. Barley is one great starter player. We have all used Barley at least once in our playthroughs of Brawl Stars, so we all know how he plays. A great brawler to use when keeping enemies at bay and making sure they don't get to the gem chest in gem grab. Not to mention that his super has the highest damage output of any brawler. His super is, in short, insane. His biggest weakness are brawlers that deal burst damage, especially up close, and that his super has a casting time. So be careful when using this character because surely you will be the first one to be targeted. Barley is heading into the B tier. Sprout was a higher tier brawler, but a recent nerf to his overgrown star powers sort of left him to be bumped down lower on the tier list. But he's still a hefty brawler to go up against. His primary deals a decent amount of damage, and it also has a nice range when it detonates. And his super, where he creates walls to shut off enemy movement, is still something to be scared of. Although the nerfs weren't as bad as you'd imagine, the damage it did to Sprout's output was massive. For these reasons, we have to put Sprout in B tier. Ems was one of the best brawlers in the last meta. She was crowned a gold brawler in many tier lists, but with the recent nerfs, well, they hit her hard. A big nerf to her health and gadget range has pushed her down big time, making her from an A tier down to a C tier brawler. But she's still worth using in casual games. Her skills though remain the same and is still quite useful with her somewhat high range and annoying constant damage. Spike is a brawler that, in our opinion, has one of the higher utilities and has many to add in a team. His primary and secondary attacks can slow enemies down, and that is a huge deal. His primary attack is hard to dodge because of the fact that it splits in all directions. His only flaw is his low health and inability to attack close combat brawlers once they get too close to him. Regardless of this though, Spike is an S tier brawler. It comes to no surprise that Mr. P has stayed towards the top brawlers for so long. With his almost indestructible super that will constantly summon little enemies to mess with your opponents, and wonderful primary attack that reaches well beyond his range due to his star power, Mr. P will be continuing to dominate the Brawl Stars meta. We've got him in the A tier. B is another glass cannon brawler, but she has a workaround for her low health. She has the ability to endure damage to 1 HP and gains a short immunity shield, enough to escape from certain peril. She also has a mechanic where if she lands her attack, her next attack will be supercharged, so that the next attack will deal upwards to 170% damage. Her super lets her summon drones to mess with the enemy even more. It's no wonder that she's ranked high on this list. That's right, we're putting B in the A tier list as well. Jacky is a support brawler that many of you probably wouldn't rank as high as we're about to. Her attacks don't need to be aimed because it goes out dealing damage to those around her. Her star power are aimed at buffing her health or reducing damage dealt to her. Her super is also a great way to drag opponents away from somewhere or closer to you to deal damage to all of them near you. Her utility is great, and as is her ability to become an offensive player and defensive player. Let's put Jacky in the B tier. Next up, we have Piper. Now, Piper is one of the better sharpshooters in the game thus far. The further she is, the better the damage, which isn't the case for most brawlers in the game. With low health, however, she can become a liability, but that's not a problem when no one can reach her. Even better, her super drops grenades around her, dealing damage to anyone near her, which is also a great way to get out of sticky situations. She is a great sharpshooter and can easily outmatch any other sharpshooter. B tier for Piper. Gene is another sharpshooter that is great. His primary attack is like any other, but the real deal where Gene shines is his super. His super lets him pull enemies afar closer to him while also stunning them in the process. This is great for support as well, as long as you have the pat on the back star power in place, since it lets you heal teammates that you hit with your super. The one downside is if you accidentally grab Penny's turret or even Jessie closer to you, which could just very well kill you on the spot. Manage to avoid doing this, and Gene is an A tier brawler in the right hands. Now let's go over Pam. Pam is a great healer and even a great tank. Her high health and her wide shooting can make her a real pain to deal with. Her healing turret that spawns when she uses her super is one of the best support skills in the game because with the right star power, it will also deal damage to enemies in addition to healing teammates. She's great in small zones and you can easily use her to control the battles in these areas. Let's get her in the A tier. We are almost through all of the brawlers, but before we go on, we want to thank you guys for checking out this video. Be sure to subscribe to our channel and click our tap that bell to get notified about our latest videos. Also hit that like button. This lets us know that you want to see more content just like this. Now Max is one of the fastest brawlers and this alone makes her a huge pain to deal with. She reloads quickly and can shoot out 4 blasts with mid-range capabilities. Her super lets her increase her movement speed along with teammates around her, making her not only a great aggressive brawler, but also a great support brawler. Now with Max, her star powers are something to take note of. She can either charge up her super as she moves, or she can reload even faster. No matter what you pick, you'll always be in for a treat. Max is an S tier brawler. Carl is up next. He was considered very low tier in the past meta, but with the recent buffs added to his damage and to his supercharge rate, these bumped him up to an A tier brawler immediately. He has a high damage output and the most interesting thing is his attacks. His attacks have the ability to go back to you after shooting, making a boomerang effect. This lets you hit an enemy twice in one go. His super is lethal as well, dealing constant damage to anyone nearby. His super can also add to his movement speed, which added with the constant damage due to his super can be quite hard to deal with. I already said it, Carl is going in the A tier. Gale is an interesting brawler. With the removal of the knockback on his own attacks, increased super range, and added consistency of his attacks, this old man certainly has built himself up from the ground. In addition to that, he also boasts huge utility, and when going into the professional range of things, that is when he shines the most. We're putting Gale in the B tier. Now, with Tara, she was also given a huge buff to her attack and health, pushing her up the tiers as well. She can deal massive amounts of damage up close, and her super lets her pull in enemies and explode, dealing massive amounts of damage. She's also great as a support brawler, with one gadget that lets you see into bushes for enemies. In a matchup against this, you gotta be able to stand your ground, cause if not, it would be all over for you. Tara has climbed her way up to the A tier. Finally, we made it to our final brawler, Surge. Surge is considered one of the top brawlers in the meta so far. His primary attacks spread out after a point, letting the range go even further and making sure that no enemy has a place to hide from it. The biggest thing about Surge is his ability to upgrade after a certain amount of times you've used his super. With each upgrade comes a cooler looking Surge and even higher damage output. His super is no joke either. His super lets him fly into the air and smash the ground, dealing damage to surrounding enemies. Damage potential is the name of the game when playing as Surge. He's a great overall brawler and a scary opponent to go up against. In the right hands, he could be higher, but we're going to end things off by putting Surge in the B tier. We did it, guys! We made it through all of these brawlers. What do you think of our rankings? Which brawlers would you move up or down? Let us know in the comments down below. Check out our other videos, be sure to subscribe and turn on that bell to be notified about our latest videos.